Once again, it's a good day, dear viewers at home, and welcome to Home Learning. Again, we are meeting for is SGCSE English Language as we help learners who are going to, who are preparing rather for the final examination, especially the Form 5s. So, in our lesson, even today, just like our previous one, we are focusing mainly on the examination, the things that you are expected to do in the examination, giving last minute advice to most of you. So in our previous lesson, you'd remember that we were looking at paper 1, which is the reading and writing paper, and even today we'll be looking at the same paper again. We went as far as exercise 2 in our previous lesson, and we're going to take it from where we left off in exercise 2 for paper 1 English language. And if you remember very well, we began that lesson with reminding you, the learner, or rather the candidate, of the expectations of the examiner when you write the English language paper. Alright, so we looked at all the assessment objectives, the 4 of them that test the 4 skills that you are tested for as far as the examination is concerned. And then we mentioned those skills that they are reading and listening. And reading and listening, we said that those are receptive skills. Those are the vehicles that you can use to receive the language. Alright, those are the methods that you can use to receive the language, which is important. And then also, we mentioned writing and speaking, which are the 2 other skills that you are tested for, and those skills, we called them productive skills. This is where you produce the language that you had received through reading and also listening. Alright, so I want to do a recap of some sort as far as the assessment objectives are concerned, especially the reading one, so that when we continue even in this lesson, and for the benefit of that viewer who could not watch our previous program, we talked about reading and writing as the one that is mainly, basically, as paper 1 English language SGCSE. It's a reading and writing paper where you are expected to read a passage or a text that is given to you, which comes in a variety of forms, and then after having read that text, then you are expected to write answers. All right, which are you are expected to answer questions which are based on the text. Okay, so you have to find the information from the text, and then when you find the information from the text, that is when you are practicing or displaying your reading skills. Okay, which is very, very important. And here, what is it that is expected of you again as far as reading is concerned? So let's go to the assessment objectives of reading. So the first one there, which is R1, it says that you need to be able to comprehend and respond to text that are presented in a variety of forms. So that's one thing that is important that you have to be able to do in your reading, that you have to display, and you display them. You display these through writing. That is when you are able to comprehend, which basically means to understand. So here, it basically means that you need to be able to understand. So if it's written in the English language, you need to display understanding of what the text is about through writing the correct answers. Okay, and then also you will then respond to the text, and the text will be presented in a variety of forms. And then we go to the second one, which is the main one as far as English language paper 1 is concerned. Actually, both of them, R1 and R2. R2, they says you need to be able to select, and that's the important part as far as paper 1 is concerned, especially exercises 1 and 2. You need to be able to select, organize, and analyze material relevant to specific purposes. And I said this one is also important. Specific purposes. When does it Okay, rather, what is the specific purpose? That's basically the question, what the question requires you to do as far as the text is concerned. And when you go to the text to identify an answer, that answer should be relative to a specific question or a specific purpose. All right, you're going to the text to look for specific information to respond in R1 to a specific question. Okay, so this is very, very important as far as reading is concerned, and it forms the basis. This assessment objective forms the basis of your English language paper 1. And moving on to R2, you need to recognize, understand main ideas, and distinguish between facts, opinions, and ideas in a text. And then finally, R4. Again, R4 is important because you will find questions, especially in exercise 2, that needs you or requires you to infer information from text. And we said that when you infer information, that is when you use the information that has been given to come up with information that has not been given. So these are the assessment objectives that you are being tested for as far as your reading and writing paper is concerned. Of course, there's writing. You can look at those assessment objectives, 6 of them. Communicate clearly, accurately, and appropriately, order and present facts, ideas, and opinions, understand and use a range of appropriate vocabulary. All right, so these are different assessment objectives which you mainly apply for your paper 2. Okay, so you'll mainly apply these ones in your paper 2, which is your continuous writing. All right, but then here we need you to be able to at least communicate clearly. That is, you communicate your answer clearly and be able to order your answer again as far as paper 1 is concerned. And of course, you'll be able to use the English language correctly. All right, now let's take it off from where we last discussed the question. We're looking at an examination paper, that is a past examination paper from the previous year, that is 2016. And in that paper, we had just answered the first question, which was, it was the first and the second question, which needed us to define hoarding. Okay, so this is the passage we're discussing. The title of the passage is Compulsive Hoarding, and we needed that. We're using this passage to come up with the answers as per the requirement of the questions in this past examination paper. So we had answered the question, what is hoarding? And then we're looking at how you can select important details from this very, very long line, which is the definition of, what's a very long sentence rather, which is the definition of hoarding here. And then this is the one that we're discussing. And then we're trying to share ways in which you can make this one fit into that space that you are given, because for this question we're only given one line in terms of space to fit all this in. All right, remember we just looked at the assessment objectives, and then we said that there's reading assessment objective number 2, famously known as R2, which requires you to be able to select information from a given text to fit a specific purpose. Okay, so in this one, when you are given the question, what is hoarding, you need to explain or define hoarding. So here, the definition is in this passage. It is defined as a pattern of behavior that is characterized by the excessive acquisition of and an unwillingness to discard large quantities of objects that cover the living areas of the home and cause significant distress. In this one thing that we mentioned was look at how long this definition is. But then obviously if you're only given one line in terms of the space to put in that definition, it means that you cannot put everything in there. That is when you then need to apply your selection skills as far as this is concerned, and make sure that when you select your answer, you do not omit the vital or the important details as far as the definition is concerned. All right, let's look at this one. What we said, that the important part that we feel we do not need to omit is this one, that it's a pattern of behavior that is characterized by, okay, fine. What happens there is that it characterized by an excessive acquisition of, all right, and then we went on to say unwillingness to discard large quantities. Large quantities is important there, of objects. All right, it's large quantities of objects that cover the living areas of the home and cause significant distress or impairment. That could be what we call excess information. We feel that what is important is here, it's that it's an excessive acquisition of and an unwillingness to discard large quantities of objects. That should be hoarding. Again, it's going to be a bit difficult for some of us, depending on your handwriting, to fit all of this in just one line. I said that my advice would be, it's my personal advice, do not omit certain details or cut your answer short on account of the space. If you're sure that you've selected, you've selected the information for that particular specific purpose, then present your answer. If it doesn't fit in the line, continue to the space that is just below the line that you've been given. I know that there's a lot that has been said as far as that is concerned, but I want to believe that if your answer is correct and you've shown that you have selected, then that one, even if it doesn't fit onto the spaces that has been given, it's going to score. So that's my personal advice to you all. Because when you give this answer as hoarding is an excessive acquisition of and an unwillingness to discard large quantities of objects, you know what? The answer begins from here to here, and I've been able to omit all of this information, which means that I was able to do what? To select. I omitted all of this information here as excess information, and then if I did this, no one is going to punish me for that, because I've displayed a skill of selecting. So this should be fine. But then if you're brave enough, again, we said that this answer, we can still reduce it further. We can cut it further so that it becomes even shorter. When we talk about excessive acquisition of something and an unwillingness, this is where we are, excessive acquisition of and also unwillingness to discard. For me, these two, they mean the same thing. If I acquire something excessively, it becomes excessive because I'm not willing to discard some of the thing of that particular things that I've been acquiring. So basically that's the same thing. So we can probably omit one of them such that the definition would read, it's an excessive acquisition of object. It's important that it's of objects. All right, or you say it's an unwillingness to discard large quantities. Okay, the large quantities again is very important. So it can be an excessive acquisition of large quantities of objects or an unwillingness to discard large quantities of objects. All right, so those are the important details that we do not need to omit. All right, I want to take you back to the question paper here, and let's look at that one. I want us to look at the question, and then we discuss something about that. I need to show, okay, we need to go to the next question because there's something that is important that I want to highlight as far as that question is concerned. All right, this is the question then. We've just answered this one, what is hoarding? And then now I want us to move on to part C. How can hoarding be a hindrance to everyday life? Remember, I said that we need to look at these WH questions, the command words, the how can hoarding be a hindrance to everyday life? And then we said that when the question says how, it basically means that you need to explain, basically. So your answer should be some kind of explanation. So that should be, okay, let's just say you need to explain a manner in which something happens. You explain a certain manner in which something happens. So that's the one thing that is going to direct you when as far as presenting the answer is concerned. All right, because if you're going to lift directly or what we call indiscriminately, then your answer will not score if you do not respond directly to the question. So here it's important that you take note of this how, all right, which means that your answer should be an explanation of some sort. So the question is, how can hoarding be a hindrance to everyday life? All right, there are certain keywords again that needs your attention. Besides the how there, we also have this word, a hindrance. You need to try and understand what it means, and also everyday life. It's very important as far as this question is concerned. So you look at the question, you look at the keyword, you try to identify the keywords, and make sure that when you go and identify the answer from the passage, you are directed by the keywords. And then even when you present your answer in the answer sheet, you also need to do what? To be directed by the keywords to the question. All right. So here, hindrance. You may not know what it means, but okay, hindrance, you feel you're going to look at that in context, what it means, and also it has to do with hindering. What is the one thing that, how does hoarding hinder or prevent one from doing his or her everyday activities? Basically, you can paraphrase that question to mean something like that. So I want us to go back to the passage right now to try and identify the answers here, with in mind carrying the fact that we are asked about how hoarding can be a hindrance to everyday life. Okay, so I need us to go back to the passage to try and identify this answer. So the question is, how can hoarding be a hindrance to everyday life? We're going back to the passage to try and identify that one. When you look at the passage, we know we last read somewhere here, so we'll take it from here and then going down with the reading, and then we remember we are scanning for the answer. We don't have to necessarily read each and every word in this one. So when you scan for the answer, we're looking for the words like everyday activities. We're looking for hindrance, or some words like prevent, because like we form synonyms whenever we see the question. And in this one, when we move our eyes, we'll land to this line here that begins here. This is when clinically significant enough to impair functioning. Hoarding can prevent typical uses of space so as to limit activities such as cooking, cleaning, moving through the house, and sleeping. It can also be dangerous if it puts the individual or others at risk from fire, falling, and other health concerns. So the question was, how can hoarding be a hindrance to everyday life? So when you look at this one, there are certain activities that we see that these are everyday activities, such as cooking, cleaning, moving through the house, and sleeping. So these are everyday activities that happen. So it gives us an idea, it should give you an idea of what the answer is in this case. And here you have hoarding can prevent typical uses of space. So remember, the question is, how can hoarding be a hindrance? So hindrance, it's a form of prevent, or like it's something that prevents you from doing something. So here, hoarding can prevent typical uses of space so as to limit activities such as cooking. So basically, what the answer is, what we're looking for, what we can work out here is that, okay, how can it be a hindrance? It can be a hindrance because it can prevent typical uses of space, or it can limit activities such as cooking, cleaning, moving through the house, and sleeping. That is our answer right there. And then now what is left is for you to be able to select the information that is necessary that you can use and try and fit into the space that you've been given. So you can take the answer from here up to here, because basically it says prevent typical uses of space. That's the one thing that it does. It can prevent you from using space. All right, that's one. And then secondly, there's also, it can limit activities such as cooking, cleaning, moving through the house, and sleeping. So those are everyday activities, and you need to use your space every day. So it limits that. It prevents typical uses of space. You can present either of the two as your answer in this one. All right. Now, moving forward, I need us to go to the next question. Again, there's something that is important that I feel we should look at, so that you pay attention to such as far as the question is concerned in exercise 1 or exercise 2 of our English language paper 1. Okay, this is the question, which is part C. This is the question that we'll be doing right now. Part C. Okay, no. Part C is the one question that we've just done. So, which means that we're going on to part D. Part D says, which age group is most vulnerable to hoarding? Again, I'm interested in this one. Which? One of the WH questions that we have discussed in our previous lessons widely. Basically, when the question says which, it means that you've got a list. You've got different options. You've got so many things that are there, and then you have to pick one. Which of the many, all right, then is relevant to the question. In this case, which age group is most vulnerable to hoarding? All right, age group that is most, not just vulnerable, but which one is most vulnerable to hoarding? So I want us to try and identify the answer again and make sure we pay attention, especially to how you can be easily misled as far as the information that is given is concerned, because it is easy to identify something, or rather a different age group, as the right answer, yet it's not, just simply because you have ignored some of the important details, especially in the questioning, and especially that part that I highlighted, which asks the group which is most vulnerable to hoarding. All right, so let's try and look at that one. So we're moving on to the next paragraph here, and then we're looking at age groups which are vulnerable, that can basically be likely suffer from hoarding. So prevalence rates, okay, we're going to take it from here. All right, in the interest of time, we're going to take it from here. Prevalence rates have been estimated at 2 to 5% in adults. All right, so we have adults, which is an age group, of course, though the condition typically manifests in childhood. So childhood, it's another age group, with symptoms worsening in advanced age. Advanced age, again, that's another age group. So we've got 3 different age groups here. The prevalence rates have been estimated at 2 to 5% in adults. Well, that's not so much. 2 to 5% in adults. Basically, we cannot say those are the most vulnerable ones. And then they also to continue say that though the condition typically manifests in childhood, which means that, well, it starts showing in childhood age. All right, well, we can consider that one, with symptoms worsening in advanced age. Here's the key word here, worsening. So if the symptoms of hoarding worsen in advanced age, it worsens as compared to childhood and adulthood. So it means that the correct answer, as far as the question is concerned, because it asks which age group is most vulnerable, then it means that it is the advanced age. That's the age group that is most vulnerable. All right, so it could be easy to be misled by this one condition. It typically manifests in childhood. Okay, it typically manifests in childhood. It is easy for you to be misled by that one. And also, even 2 to 5% in adults, you can also be misled to think that is the right answer. So if you're not so careful and you have not paid much attention to the keywords to the question, then you might get this one wrong. Okay, so that's just that. Let's look at one more thing as far as this question is concerned. I need us to move on to the next exercise, which we call information transfer, and famously or commonly known as form filling. I want us to look at the next question as far as this exercise is concerned, because remember we said that we're not necessarily doing or rather attempting all the questions. We are only looking at the things that we feel that they are very, very important for you to take note of as far as this one is concerned. So let's move on to the next to this question that I want us to look at, and I want you to pay attention again to something that is important that may lead you to lose marks unnecessarily. Okay, this is the last one. We know exercise 2, you'll always have that part H where you are supposed to give details, and remember you need to scan through the entire passage for those details that are required in part H. And in part H is the question that is going to always have 4 marks, as we can see right there at the bottom right of the page. There it has got 4 marks. So this question is always there in exercise 2. All right, so it carries 4 marks, which means that it's important that you score the 4 marks. You get the 4 marks there. And one thing that is important is that you need to read carefully again the question, what it requires. And then now I want you to pay attention, or rather draw your attention to 2 things. Maybe just yes to 2 things. First one, what does experience, okay, let's look at the question. What does experience adverse effects health-wise and socially? That's the question. They experience adverse effects. Of course, you work out what adverse means. All right, that is extreme effects, health-wise and socially. Mention 4 details to support this. So here you've been given a statement. What has experienced adverse effects health-wise and socially? But yours is to support these. Find details from the passage, the entire passage. You go back from the beginning of the passage to the end of the passage. Try to identify what? Try to identify these. All right, the adverse effects, that is the worst, the most negative effects health-wise and socially. So we've been given 2 things here. The effects there, health-wise and also socially. My general advice would be, if you're given a question like this, make sure that you label the answers. All right, so here you are given, you are mentioning 4 details. Divide the details into 2. All right, because you've got 2 keywords there that are, or rather 2 things that are required of you as far as the details are concerned. That is 2 specific things that have been given. So first of all, you are to present this part. We'll say the first one is health-wise. As far as the question is concerned. So you go to the passage, you look at the effects that have to do with what? With health. All right, then so that could be your first one and the second one. It's 4 details, remember, so divide them into 2 because you've got 2. So basically you're sharing the 4 details amongst this. And then secondly, you've got social. That is socially. So this is a general advice that you need to always label your answers so that we know. Don't just put in those details, those 4 details there without guiding the examiner on which one is which of the 2 that have been asked there, and the 2 being this one, health-wise and socially. All right, there is socially there. So those are the 2. So try to label your answers so that we know. And then having done this, then you need, of course, to give the relevant point. Okay, relevant effects that have to do with health here and here. And then here, again, you also give relevant details, 2 of them that have to do with the social aspect of the adverse effects of hoarding. So we won't be going to the answer or rather to the passage to try and identify those, but these are the things that this is just the thing that I wanted to bring your attention to as far as this question is concerned. All right, moving forward, I now want us to look at the next exercise, which is called information transfer, that you probably know as form filling. There are certain things again that I want us to highlight as far as that one is concerned, and things that are important, and you find that many candidates, they fail to score easy marks, otherwise what could be easy marks, just because of carelessness. There are certain things that you need to pay attention to as far as this exercise, which is exercise 3, is concerned. All right, even this one is taken from last year's paper, that is 2016 English Language Paper 1 SGCSE. And here in exercise 3, as you might be aware, you are always given a form of a biography. That is, we are given a profile of a specific person. Okay, it could be a famous person, it could be someone that is not so famous, it could be someone that you have never even heard about. And then you are supposed to assume being that person. All right, and then you have to fill in a form on their behalf, but you assume you are the person. So I'll take back the fact that is on their behalf. Let's just say you assume you are the other person, and then you have to fill in that form. What does that mean? It means that you cannot use the third person narrative or the point of view as far as this is concerned. Instead, you always have to use the first person. All right, first person being what? The first person in this case, you use first person I, or me, or myself. So all these are first person pronouns, which means that these are the ones that you have to use. You don't use the third person like he or she, because the question says imagine you are so and so. All right, so that is very, very important again, that you know. So that's the basic thing about this, because immediately you deviate from that, and then you assume, or rather you distance yourself from being that particular person, from empathizing with that particular person they are talking about. Then you are likely to, actually you're going to be wrong as far as presenting your answer is concerned. So that's the first thing that I want to bring your attention to. Then the second one, which I feel for this exercise is the most important one, that's this one. Instructions. For me, this is the most important thing to be aware of. Instructions. You need to follow instructions. I cannot emphasize this enough. Form filling, make sure you follow instructions. Okay, let's look at examples of that. The first one there, in section A. So this paper, or rather this part of the question paper, is going to be divided into 3 sections. So you have what? You have got section A, and you also have section B, and you always have section C. And section C will always require that you write sentences. So these are the 3 sections that you are likely to find in this part of the examination, in as far as English language paper 1 is concerned. So here you have got this first instruction that is given in block letters. It says use block letters for this section. All right, use block letters for this section. Which one? This section. And this section is section A. Use block letters for section A. Which means that when you get to section B here, you don't have to use block letters. When you get to section C here, there's no way you can use block letters. Why? Because you are writing what? Sentences. And a sentence cannot be in block letters. Remember, you need to observe all the grammatical conventions of writing a sentence. It begins with a capital letter and ends in a full stop. And in between the words in the sentence, you can have compound words. You can have words that need for you to be able to use capital letters as far as those words are concerned. So do everything that has to do with a sentence. It has to be correct. So if you take that instruction that says use block letters for this section and you carry it forward to section C, then obviously you're not going to score any mark as far as this is concerned, because you cannot have a sentence that is only in block letters. Okay, so that said, let's rather go back to the first section, which is section A, as far as this is concerned. Remember, we're trying to look at the things that I've just said that are important as far as this is concerned, which are instructions. Okay, so here the instruction says you use block letters for this section, which means that it's only section A. So you're going to write the full name here in block letters. You give the place of birth, which should be given in the passage. You also look at the last school attended, so you need to be careful in that one when you identify the last school attended. Achievements at high school, so you state that. Remember, when you present these answers, you need to use your first person, as we've stated in the beginning of this question. So you use the first person, like achievements at high school, for example. This is just an example, not necessarily information that has been gathered from the passage. You can say I obtained position 1. I obtained position. Okay, that should be this should be position. I'd say position 1. You have to write in full, of course. I obtained position 1 in something like that. But what is important here, it's this. It's I. You are the one person who's talking here. And then university attended, again, you get that one. Courses studied, you mentioned that you're going to find all this information. All right, that's another important thing. Every answer that you're going to present here, the information that you're going to present, it's information that you will take from what? You'll get that information from the passage that has been given. It's not about you. All right, it has to do with the information that you found in the passage. Let's get to section B. Again, we are looking at the following instructions here. Section B says, okay, they need occupations, and the instruction says we should circle. All right, that's the instruction there, right there. You need to circle the occupation. So here again, it says occupations. There's an S there, which means that it's in the plural. So you are expected not to circle just one, but it has to be more than one, because it's more than one occupation. So when you circle, what you can do is, if you found that she's an actress rather, then you write that one. If she's a dancer, you'll circle that one. All right, a publisher, you'll also circle that one. It's occupations, so you circle each of those separately for you to score that mark. Okay, then the claim to fame, that's something that made him famous or made her famous, and then you present that answer in small letters this time, because we are no longer in section A where we were instructed to use block letters. And then we go to the next one. It says any experience in broadcasting, and this time around it says tick, which means that we are no longer circling, but we are now ticking. So we have to tick the answer. So any experience in broadcasting. So here the answer is yes or no. If there is experience in broadcasting, you're going to tick in the box yes. Don't cross. The instruction says tick. Do not circle. the instruction says tick. So make sure you follow the instruction. All right. Some instructions, or rather, other instructions would be you need to delete. So I want us to say that okay, maybe to pretend that the question was, the instruction rather was for us to delete. All right, maybe let's go back so that we have that one appropriate there. We remove also the tick in that one. So if the instruction says delete, sometimes this instruction is the one that gives many students a problem. Here we're going to instead use delete. We're going to assume the instruction is delete. Okay, what do you do in cases like this one? You are not to tick, but you are asked to delete. So what you do is, unlike in ticking and in circling and in crossing, where we always circle, tick, or cross what is applicable, all right, in deleting, we instead delete what is not applicable. So we do not delete the answer, we delete what is not correct. All right, but when we circle, when we tick, when we cross, we circle, tick, cross what is applicable, which means that we circle the answer, or we tick the answer, or we cross the answer. But when we are asked to delete, we do differently. Now we delete what is not applicable. We do not delete the answer. So here, if the answer is yes, if we were asked to tick, we would tick the yes box as the question was. If we were asked to circle, we would circle yes, because the answer is yes. If we were asked to cross, we would cross yes. But now that we are asked to delete, we cannot delete yes. Rather, we are going to delete what? No. And you just have to draw one vertical line, all right, or maybe another cross, or even one horizontal line. Or rather, it has to be one diagonal line or one horizontal line to delete. You delete what is not applicable so that the answer remains correct. All right, so that's one part that is important as far as this is concerned. And again, continuing to the last important instruction that you have to observe, it's this one. This is in section C, where you are asked to write sentences. All right, it says write one sentence of 12 to 20 words explaining why you deserve to win. All right, here, why you deserve to win. Remember, we said that you assume you are the person that they are talking about. So even here, the information, students, they get to be carried away when it gets here, to assume that the question is now referring to them personally. No, you are still the character that is being talked about in the biography. Okay, that is in the passage that you are given there for this exercise, which is exercise 3. So why you deserve to win, the reason that you have to give has to be a reason that relates to the information that is given, that relates to the protagonist, in this case the character that we are given in this passage. All right, don't think that now it's about you. No, it's not about you. You remember who you are. You are that character, not yourself. So why do you deserve to win? Don't tell us about your own problems, but rather go to the passage, find the answer or details that you can use from the passage. Assume you are the person and then think how he or she could respond to this question, and then you write that information. It doesn't have to be personal. But as far as the instruction again is concerned, this is the one thing that I want to point out. Here the question says write one sentence. You may have two spaces there, you may have two lines, but you need to write one sentence, and the sentence should be of 12 to 20 words, which means that the words that in your sentence you're going to use no lesser than 12 words and no more than 20 words. You can have 12 words, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 words, not 21, not 11. You need 12 to 20 words. And I don't know why so many students ignore this part. One sentence, 12 to 20 words. Even the second one states the same. One sentence, 12 to 20 words. Immediately, you don't do this. The very first thing that the marker is going to do is to count the number of words. And if they are less than 12 or more than 20, then you automatically score a 0 in this one. Alright? And that's the part that I wanted to point out. And then one final thing that I want to talk about as far as form filling is concerned, it's one that is normally in section A, which are the personal details. Sometimes you are asked to give, even if the instruction says use block letters, there is always an exception when it gets to what? When it gets to email addresses, there's always an exception when it gets to an email address. So for emails, let me just call them emails or websites, or the websites, for both of these we always use what? Lower cases, what we call small letters. So we always use small letters regardless of the instruction. You can never present an email address in capital letters or block letters. You can not find a website that is also in capital letters. So regardless of the instruction, email addresses and websites, they are always presented in what? In small letters. And secondly, there is no spacing. They are always presented as one word. So this is just a reminder, you know how to present this, alright? So they are always presented as one word. So there shouldn't be any spaces, and make sure your letters are of the same height when you present small letters, when you present your emails or even your websites. So these are the important things that I feel we also need to talk about as far as this question is concerned. And probably one last thing is when you're asked to give a physical address. When you give physical addresses, we always start with the smallest unit. If it's a street name, then it is going to be street number so and so, this town, or else the city, and then this country. If there's a house number, it's going to be house number so and so, in this street, in this town, in this country. Okay, so we begin with the smallest unit first whenever we are supposed to present physical addresses. Okay, in a few minutes that are remaining in our program, I want us to quickly look at exercise 5. Exercise 4, we know it's note taking. So for note taking, while I open this, I'll probably say a few things about that. It's that what is important in note taking is that you remember that these are just notes, which means that you don't have to present the answer in full sentences. So we're not expecting necessarily to find the full stops, for example, when you are writing your notes. That is an exercise for in your note taking. And remember, you need to get a cue, or rather a guide, on what information to present from the subtopics that are given. Actually, they are always given there in form filling. So you take those subtopics, you look at them, and then you go to the passage, you identify the relevant information, and you present it in a condensed form. All right. So you use short phrases. You can use one-word answers, but do not use what full sentences. A full sentence will obviously have a full stop. So we don't expect to see any full stops in writing exercise 4 or any response to exercise 4. Let's look at exercise 5 in a few minutes that we have. Here again, there are a few things that I want to highlight, which again I'll assume is a reminder. The question says in this one, for specifically this one, we are given a passage that is entitled Cycling. So this is the title of the passage. It is cycling. It is on cycling. And the question is, write a summary on the opposite page describing the benefits of cycling and how you can ensure safety in this sport. So you are describing, all right? That's the command word. You have to describe. What do you describe? I want to do this. Use this color, red, for the first part. It's the benefits of cycling. That's the first part. You are describing what? Benefits of cycling. And how you can ensure safety in the sport. I'm going to use a different color this time. How you can ensure safety in the sport. So we've got two things: benefits of cycling and how you can ensure safety in the sport. So what happens here is that whenever the points that we give in a summary, they total up to 6 marks. So you can only get 6 marks for the points that have been given. For the points that you gave. And the other 4 marks, as we know that the total marks for the summary exercise 5, it's 10 marks. So the other 4 marks are reserved for the language aspect of it. But as far as the points are concerned, then you can only get a maximum of 6 marks. Which then essentially means if you have been given 2 aspects to the question, there are 2 aspects to the question, just like in this one. We've got the benefits, which is 1, and also how you can ensure safety, which is 2. These 2 aspects can only share the 6 marks, and they share the 6 marks equally, which means that the benefits of cycling will be over 3, and also the how you can ensure safety will also be over 3, to make a total of 6. If for any reason you decide to write about 4 or 5 benefits of cycling, and you only give 1 way in which you can ensure safety in the sport, then the maximum you can get there is only 4. That is if they are all correct. So you can only get a maximum of 3, even if you can have 5 correct benefits of cycling, but you can only get 3. Because you can never get what? You can never get 5 over 3. Alright? So the other 3 is reserved for the next aspect of the question. So make sure you pay attention to that. And it's not always where you find that the question in the summary question or the question of the summary requires you that you have you give 2 aspects to it, or it has 2 aspects. Sometimes it's just one question, you just summarize about one thing, but in this case you are summarizing about 2 things: benefits of cycling and also how you can ensure safety in the sport. Then one probably is asking himself or herself that, do I have to give 3 and restrict myself to 3 points here and another 3 points in that one? Well, my advice would be that will be dangerous to do. So if you can get 4 of the benefits of cycling, give the 4. And then also, if you can get 4 of how you can ensure safety, give 4 reasons. Give 4 ways in which you can ensure safety, just in case one of those is not correct. So you have the cover or the backup of the other one. Alright, so here that's the one thing. And another thing which is important that I feel we can talk about is this, the number of words. It's about 100 words. It shouldn't be longer than 120 words. So again, it's important. And when we talk about 100 words, we don't mean 60 words. If it's 60 words, it's not next to 100. So make sure that the question says here, your summary should be about, that is, the instruction says your summary should be about 100 words. So about 100 words, obviously you should be above 95 at least, to a bit more than 100, or the most it should be 120 words. So if you have about 60 words, then it means that you do not have any language that you have used to answer this. Instead, you have given what? You have given the points. Alright. Another thing to remember is that when you write a summary, you need to write it in a continuous form. Do not leave any spaces or any paragraphs rather. It's just one paragraph. Okay? Not in any point form, but you have to write in a continuous form and in one paragraph. Okay, then obviously there's always, okay, we've got this one. It says you should use your own words as far as possible. Well, if you are brave enough again and you trust yourself, you can do that, but I normally advise that you don't pay much attention into that, because sometimes when you use your own words when you use your own words, you tend to distort the meaning of the entire of the entire passage or of the entire point that you are giving. And then if the points then suddenly means something different from what it actually means, then it means that the answer is going to be wrong. You won't get a mark for the point in the first place, and secondly, you won't even get a mark for your own words. So, well, you should be careful. Let me just say that. Be careful. I wouldn't say do not use your own words. You can use your own words, of course, so that you score extra marks, but be careful that by attempting to use your own words, you do not end up losing even that mark for the points. There's nothing wrong with you extracting the information, lifting it as it is from the passage. Okay, so that is extracting the point as it is in the passage. And then finally, it says that you will receive up to 6 marks for the content and up to 4 marks for the style and accuracy of your language. Here, the style and accuracy of your language basically means that you should be able to order your points correctly and be able to join them together correctly and use the English language in the correct way, accurately, appropriately, and clearly too. So basically that it means that if you're able to order your work, then that's that. Okay, so when I look at my time, we have come to the end of this program, or rather of this lesson, and I want to believe that there's so much that you got from this lesson. Although we couldn't probably exemplify everything, but then you did benefit somehow from the information that was given. And make sure you pay attention to details, you pay attention to keywords when you write this paper. And what is left for me is to wish you all the best as far as writing your English language is concerned. Thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your viewing.